So what is a helicopter parent? We'll define that first and then get into some steps for how to avoid being a helicopter parent. The term helicopter parent originally came to my attention through Foster Cline and Jim Fay. You may be familiar with those names. They are the founders and originators of the parenting with love and logic approach. There's a couple of books that they put out under that title. Some amazing resources, by the way. I highly recommend Cline and Fay, Parenting with Love and Logic. And this term helicopter parent. So what does this mean? If you picture a helicopter, and the blades are spinning and it's just hovering right there. And so if you're a child right here and you have a helicopter parent right here, that parent is hovering and watching over and just kind of always right there. As opposed to maybe a distant parent or a detached parent who is, who knows where? Not here. So those might be the two extremes. We've got the detached or the distant parenting style versus the helicopter parent that's constantly hovering and trying to take care of everything right here close to the child. What if there's a third alternative to be a conscious, loving, positive parent? We could add all kinds of fun words to this. I like the word conscious and present because those words imply that you are nearby and close enough to respond when necessary, but not so close that you're interfering with every little decision that that child makes. How do we accomplish that and avoid being the helicopter parent? Here's the first thing. Remember your job. This is something that I've reiterated so many times right here on our channel in the Positive Parenting playlist and on our Parenting Power Up audio course. If you're connected to that, you'll hear this from me again and again and again. Your job is to love them no matter what and even if. To love them no matter what and even if. Look, as parents, we get distracted sometimes. We start to think that our job is something else. Like, for example, okay, my job is to make sure that my child does his homework, does well in school, right? Okay, that's when we get sucked into a lot as a parent. If I think my job is to make sure that he does his homework, can you see that I'm likely to become this helicopter over this child who's doing homework? I'm going to hover there. I'm going to stand over him and make sure that he does this. Now, make sure that they can apply to almost anything. I used homework as an example. Make sure that they treat each other kindly, the kids. Make sure that they are respectful. Make sure that they don't use drugs. Make sure that they don't get involved in a relationship too early. Whatever, okay? That's when I'm more likely to hover over this child and become the helicopter parent. So understanding your job is to love them no matter what and even if helps you to back off from the hovering a little bit and stop being that helicopter parent. Here's another perspective that might help a bit. When we hover, when we are helicoptering over our children, probably we're feeling nervous about what they are either doing or experiencing right now. And then we get distracted about our job and we think our job is to protect them from whatever experience they're about to have. As a general rule, most of the experiences that our children will encounter are experiences that they can handle and that they need in order to learn or grow or develop or stretch in certain ways. The homework thing, for example. Here's my child, and here's me as this helicopter parent trying to make sure that my child does his homework, right? Well, what if I'm not there? Do you see what fear starts to come up? Well, my kid's probably not going to get his homework done. Okay, how is that a good opportunity for my child? You think about what's going to happen if he doesn't get his homework done, he doesn't turn it in, whatever it is, right? He's going to have to come to terms with that at some point. The teacher the next day, for example, might be asking my child, hey, where's your homework? Now, if I'm the helicopter parent making sure that he gets it done, then we're going to have some conflict at home over that, but it's going to get done, and he doesn't get to have any opportunity or any experience tomorrow with the teacher. Now, that may not be the best example, but think about other ways that this might apply. What if my child doesn't get his room cleaned? Or what if she doesn't treat her friends nicely? Do you see, all of these things that we start to worry about as parents are actually learning opportunities for our children. But because we're doing our job, remember what's our job? To love them no matter what, and even if we're doing our job well, we're going to worry about them having consequences out there in the real world. Do you see that? Connect with that for a moment, because emotionally you get tied into your kids' consequences, and helicoptering over them is often an attempt to rescue our kids from their own consequences, most of which they need to have a wonderful learning opportunity. And then we can come in as a supportive, benevolent, loving parent with empathy and compassion and love. We put our arms around them and say, "Oh, sweetie, that's a hard consequence, isn't it?" Not in an "I told you so" sort of a way, but we get to be the empathic, loving, supportive parent after they've had their consequence. Let them have their consequences. They need them for their growth and development. Let's not rob them of that opportunity, that special, wonderful, precious learning opportunity that really comes at a lower cost when they're young. Think about that for a moment. The consequences that our kids are facing, relatively speaking, are much less expensive than if they had a similar consequence later on in life. Okay, quick example. If I go into a store with my 5-year-old, okay, little kid, and we both are feeling the munchies, and we see the candy bar there on the shelf, and we take the 5-finger discount, if you know what that is. Grab the candy bar, head out of the store without paying. Okay? I do it, my 5-year-old does it. Officer Friendly is right outside the front door. He stops us. He says, "Hey, saw you take the 5-finger discount there on the candy bars." What happens to me? What happens to my 5-year-old? Do you see how the cost is very, very different for an older person? We want our children to learn what they need to learn now, because tomorrow is more expensive. Yesterday's not an option. Now is good. Don't rob them of that opportunity to have a learning experience at the lowest cost possible. Now, here's a little brain hack for you. I capture this in 3 messages. If you'll focus on these 3 messages, it will help you to back off of the helicoptering and become a conscious, present parent. We're not talking detached. We're not talking helicoptering. We're talking conscious and present. Here's the 3 messages. Message number 1 is your job. I love you no matter what and even if. Send that message regularly and powerfully to your children. Message number 2. If you have any questions, ask. This is your way of acknowledging that as a parent, you've been around for a while. You've had some experiences. You can probably help them out with this, but you're not going to cram it down their throat. Okay? You're going to back off from the helicoptering, and you're going to say, "Look, if you have any questions, ask." Message number 3. Good luck. That's the hardest one, by the way, because that's where you actually back off of the helicoptering. And you're there, you're present, you're conscious. Remember messages 1 and 2. But you're not going to interfere. And you're affirming to your child at this point that they are smart enough and bright enough and wonderful enough to learn from their experiences and to handle their life in a way that's going to make them ultimately more happy. I hope that you found this helpful. If you've enjoyed these parenting videos, you're going to love the Parenting Power Up course. You can connect to it right over there.